Why do we want to go there anyway?
Fish.
Hanging out? Birds, views? I'll let you click through these things. Solitude. It's all you. Do it all yourself. It's absolutely no fun. 2 bass at a time. Those are a pair of 3-pounders. Scenery just unparalleled anywhere else. I mean, it's a unique, totally unique ecosystem.
You ever run any wells while you're, I mean, you
I
know?
wasn't there that time of year. There's camp, by the way. There's camp. Kitchen. Kitchen's actually here. Dining room. And we all had our own tents. In the same. You got to burn your toilet paper to the coyotes. Bury it and burn it. There's a knockoff Starbucks down there. You can see the estuaries can get really tiny. You can get in there and you have it all to yourself. We caught some snook out of there. See, those were the halibut that came out of that hole. Gary with the cigar hanging out of his mouth. If you go onto his website and look up that trip from this year, there's actually some film footage shot by one of the Canadians of this all going on. It's pretty funny. And our cook. Those are some of the flies, if you can see them. Chartreuse. They all look like they're chartreuse over white. The weight on the Klausers is all the way forward for jigging action. Diving at the bottom, which crabs do. That was the average size halibut. Average. Doormats. 2 at a time. 2 at a time on surfworms. 20-pound test, straight tippets of the dropper. Hiking the dunes. That was the turtle patrol. Another good thumbs up. They're actually patrolling to make sure they don't poach the turtle eggs. That's his job, is to patrol the beach. And that was the hole. That was it.
Huh.
Little stuff. There's a pargo, striped pargo. That's that. You remember that shrimp pattern, the blue shrimp? That thing was just absolutely lethal. That's a tube fly, by the way. You can ride the hook up or down. And there's the weed guard on the front of it, 40-pound fluorocarbon to make sure it goes over the top of the branches when you flip in there. Spotted bay bass. Fish we couldn't even name. No fun at all. Absolutely no fun to go down there. There's nothing to see.
Are the kayaks tied up to
The paddle's stuck in the sand.
Okay.
Not my paddle, but I had an anchor. I brought an anchor, so I was all set there.
I wanted to ask you about the kayaks. If you're fishing here, not down there, and you have your own, you're buying your own, or you're borrowing your own, whatever you're doing, what do you recommend for fishing, and how do you rig it so you're not all caught up with lines and hooks and trying to get the fish in and all that? I would really enjoy fishing in our kayak, but it's not been real fun, as far as...
We'll have to talk. We actually did a seminar on that, and there's also on the Flyflicker website, if you look that up in the search engine.
What website?
Flyflicker, F-L-I-F-L-I-C-K-R. Get it from me after the presentation. There's all kinds of advice and pictures on how to rig a kayak.
Okay, for fishing.
And there's lots of different ways to do
Are
it.
these all inflatable, or...?
No, those boats, want to go back?
Hard plastic.
These are hard plastic. That's an ocean kayak.
Or they sit on...
13-foot sit on top. You want the sit on tops in case you fall out, because that occasionally happens.
Because it's easier
Right?
to get back
Yeah.
in.
It's easier to get back in, right? It's easier to get in and out. When you're enclosed in there also, we swing our legs over the side. So we're in a chair, and then the boat's this way.
Okay.
You strip your line where your legs used to be. Now when you cast, it just goes right out. And it's easier on your back to sit this way than this way all day, right? And we have fins on our feet so we can maneuver the kayak. It's like a trolling motor. And when you hook the big one, you just kick your way away from the mangroves and hang on and let them in there.
You might get sitting out there for over an hour without touching the paddle.
Yeah. Some days when we're using the current and we got it set up and everything's perfect, sometimes an hour without even touching the
What
paddle.
kind of fins do you use?
Light as possible, because then there's no weight pulling down on your leg. Because your legs, we put a seat cushion, the life, they're kind of like they qualify as a life jacket, a throwable.
Are they fins that you would use like for snorkeling?
Float tubing,
That kind of
float
thing?
tubing. The snorkeling ones are probably too big.
Force fins?
Force fins are heavy.
But they
Force
work
fins are
very
great,
well.
but they're heavy.
Yeah.
The lightweight ones you can get from Cabela's or whatever weigh absolutely nothing. And they don't put any strain on your leg, because remember the bottom of that kayak is sitting against your upper leg, the back of your upper leg, cut off your
So
circulation.
where did you get those? What? The light weight fins, are they?
Cut that one.
Right back here.
Right? So those are great because they don't weigh much. And they're real easy to put in your suitcase. Remember, you got a pack to go there, and everybody's charging extra for luggage now, no matter where you go, which is kind of, I'd like to apologize for that, but I don't know what they're going to do about that. But those are great, and they don't take up any room in your equipment bag either.
But on the other hand, if I might interject, $25 for an extra bag or
Yeah.
$50 for an overweight charge on a bag is very small in
On a 50.
comparison to the entire trip.
Yeah,
And you ought to take what the heck you want to take to go fishing.
absolutely. Good
you
point.
know?
Good
So
point.
Everybody gets all worked up about the overweight charges or an extra bag charge, but really, it's just the price of going fishing. It's just a very small charge against a whole bunch of more stuff.
Yeah. On Gary's trip, it's $1,500 plus your airfare. And that's for a week of essentially, well, I can't say it was exactly guided fishing. Kind of takes you there, gives you some safety rules. and turns
Suggested
you loose.
fishing.
Suggest, yeah. So you're kind of on your own with that. If you need help with stuff, ask, type of thing. But the extra bag, no. You want to have your toys with you. And I mean, I must have had three or four bags of stuff
Yeah.
because I just didn't want to not have it. I want to have my toys and have my boat set up the way I wanted it set up. I mean, it took me an hour to rig my kayak the way I wanted it, with the multiple rod holders, everything on there, so
You
set
said
up.
you took an anchor too, right?
I had my regular anchor, which was a folding anchor, and I had my sea anchor, drift sock, had everything.
Are there rod holders that clamp on the sides, or
No.
what do you do?
The rod holders, I have a piece that goes on up front. It's just a foam piece that straps on around the hull, and it's got a big vinyl, hard vinyl plastic. You use them for refrigerator tube, hard plastic drain pipe. It's about, I want to say it's 1/4 to 1/2 inch, and it goes over the rope that ties it around. It gives me this big loop on top of a foam block. In the back, I've got attached to the kayak is a shock cord loop with a rope going around the transom, coming to one on the other side. I can rack 2 rods, sticking the reel in through that loop, which cinches it down through that loop up front with the front of the rod. And I've got 2 of them. They're parallel to the deck, so they're no hazard to casting. They're parallel to the deck. They're out of the way, no windage, no anything. And I've got 1 rod ready to go if I'm carrying 3, which is, resting between my legs and sticking forward while I paddle. You get where I want to go, just deploy, drain line off, and we're in business. But you tie everything off to the kayak where you want to have it go. I've got a trolley system that enables me to tie the anchors on, whether it's the drift sock or the actual anchor, and take that line to either end of the kayak. So it's anchored with the bow into the wind or to the current. And then everything else is downwind off my right shoulder, because I'm right-handed. And there's not a lot less kayak behind me on my stern end. Right? So everything never touches the kayak. It's real clean. Really clean setup.
Is there a picture on Flyfishing?
Yes. There's a whole thing on step-by-step about how to set that up. And I tell you, it's only a technique for setting it up. Some guys have the rod holders that they buy from Scott and put all that stuff together. I don't want anything sticking up in the air when I'm fly fishing, because sometimes I'm taking it over my other shoulder, depending on the wind and where I happen to be at the time. If there's a fish breaking over there, I generally pick it up with 2 hands, get that line spayed out on the water, and then I can cast this way, same as on my forehand. I've got the line coming this way over my head on the downwind side of me. Even though my rod hand is over here, the line's all here from this plane as I cast. Because my stripping basket, which is the whole kayak, is over here. So I get that line coming up out of that basket. So next.
What about transport?
Transport, you've got to make your own arrangements to get there, unless you're part of the tour. You got to fly down. Well, we'll get to that in a second.
No, I was talking about the kayaks and stuff.
Throw them on your car and go. Yeah, nothing but a blanket and a couple pieces of rope will get you there. It's real easy. Paddles are 2-piece. Or they fit in there. Lots of good fun. Having a buddy, somebody to help you unhook a fish. It was funny, these guys brought these soft baskets which are no good in the surf, and then didn't bring a bogo over, and we're catching halibut. It's funny, after I brought this Canadian guy over and said, "Come on, go fish the surf with me, go fish the surf with me." He goes, Gary says it's no good. I said, just bring your rod. He had no idea how to do it anyway. I said, just bring your rod. No, it'll be fine. I'll just watch and blah, blah, blah. Third cast, and gave him a general tour of the holes and say, yeah, you fish these holes right here where it's darker water. And, oh, it's making sense. I said, let's work on this one first. 10-pound halibut. And he's going, I'm going to get my rod. I'm going to get my rod. And I said, well, the penalty is you have to take the fish back to camp. So he had to march all the way across the dunes.
Oh.
And they actually got a picture of him coming back across the dunes, holding this halibut over his shoulder. It's pretty funny. But it was amazing how fast he and Gary both showed up with their fly rods. Different resources you have. These are tackles and charter guys. And you can get them from me. These two guys are really good here. And the Baja Big Fish, Pam is very good. She's in Loretto,
Oh, Pam.
Pam Bowles. And they know a lot of the operation.
She rents equipment too.
She'll rent you stuff. Not always cheap, but she'll work with you. She'll work with you, especially in a down year, which it has been. They didn't get near the Dorado they had the year before, which they loved to chase. And, Jeff DeBrown is out of Real Baja, and he knows a lot about that and the East Cape fishing too. He's been around the block a few times. All right. Different fly shops, of course. You should be familiar with all those. And then getting there, other airlines that still travel down there, different sources of maps, different sources of weather, and information you need to plan your trip. See, these. Well,
Oops, sorry.
oh,
Southwest goes to La Paz?
yep. Last I checked, they could change this week. They were in and around somewhere. So just find out what's going on. Magic seaweed and temp break. I had a very good idea of what was going on temperature-wise and which species I'd be looking for in the estros. And I tied accordingly and dressed accordingly. And the waders were a guy. Everyone else fished generally 3 little sessions, and I just would leave the beach after breakfast and show up after dark for dinner. Most of them had already been finished eating. I'd be still out fishing. It was warm enough. Warm is good. Here's some different places, and you might want to find some more information. Gary Graham's book is good, but it's very general. But it does give you some of the big picture. That's actually where I started. We went through a few of these others, but nobody has a lot of information on Magdalena Bay. There's a lot of people fishing it, I think, more than a few people, I should say, fishing it that know a lot about it that aren't saying anything about it. And the danger there is the pollution and the overfishing. These guys trying to make a living. And it's hard to fault them for doing that when they're subsistence fishing. And there's got to be a balance in there somewhere. But they say we've eaten 90% of the ocean's fish in the tuna department. And the evidence of that here we're seeing right now, and that our bass counts are dropping off because the Humboldt squid, without anything to eat them, which used to be the tuna, are showing up and eating our bass. Our counts are so far down now the last couple of years. And of course it goes in cycles, but we better start getting used to fishing for squid.